So it is Friday. It is the end of week 10. Yes, it has only been 10 weeks of the Trump presidency so far. It's still just a baby, really. In just a minute, we're going to have our panel grade the president's performance. But let's take a look back at the week that was.
The White House says tax reform isn't partisan, but it surely will be if they only propose massive tax cuts for the wealthy.
What I had to do is I needed a place that I could actually go and find this information and review it.
We have an aggressive agenda. We've been moving quickly on this aggressive agenda, but we want to make sure that we get it right.
One of those places that he hopes to find common ground with Senate Democrats here tonight is the confirmation of Judge Neil Gorsuch to the Supreme Court.
I want to acknowledge the truly amazing people behind me on this stage, our incredible coal miners. We love our coal miners.
Give me a reason to recuse myself, I might consider it.
The events of last week, I think, called that so seriously into question that he really ought to recuse himself.
There's nothing that I see that is problematic in him conducting an investigation.
I'll admit that I voted for him. But I've got a job in the United States Senate, and I take that job extremely seriously.
If we don't do this, then he'll just go work with Democrats to try and change Obamacare, and that's hardly a conservative thing.
And he's going to get the votes from wherever he can.
Here now, Chris Stirewalt, Fox News politics editor, Molly Hemingway, senior editor at The Federalist, and Jessica DeLoach, a Democratic strategist. Welcome to all of you. Wow, it has been another whopper of a week. And Chris, let me start with you. As you look at grading week 10, what have you got?
Well, look, it's spares and strikes, a couple of gutter balls. The biggest problem is that coming off of the defeat of Trump Care last week, or the temporary defeat, it may be, of Trump Care last week, the urgent necessity for this administration was to show forward progress, speak in a clear voice, and move on to demonstrate to their supporters and people who didn't support them that this administration is capable and that up to the task, and they're moving forward on things that are popular. And instead, most of the week was spent fighting about Devin Nunes. You had at the end General Mike Flynn with his seemingly out of left field request for immunity. And it was all off topic, and it was all on a topic that was not helpful for the administration. So C-.
Why do you think their wheels are spinning in that way, Chris?
There was a piece, and I don't want to put too much into anybody's reporting, but there was a piece from Jonathan Swan and Mike Allen at Axios that basically talked about an administration with their knives out at each other's throats and the constant infighting, and they had their first basic summary execution. They fired a senior staffer, deputy chief of staff, it sounds like, and this goes on, and all this tumult, and none of this gets Trump to where he needs to be. Where Trump needs is a cohesive unit behind him that's helping him execute on this stuff, not adding drama to an already dramatic president.
Wow. Jessica, let's move on to you. What's your take on what we just saw? We just took a look back at the week. What's your grade?
This has been a very, very rough week, and apparently I'm a pretty harsh grader. So, you know, obviously, right out of the gate, what we've seen with this administration is a huge policy failure. They came out of the gate wanting to talk about making good on a campaign promise, which was repeal and replace, and what we learned is that they didn't have a plan that their own party could get on board with. Coming out of the gate with a huge policy failure like that is not good for any president. So there's going to be some recovery that needs to happen, and hopefully for President Trump that could happen with tax reform. But I don't think that's going to be the case, because we know that his party is already sending signals that they don't trust the White House to handle the reforms that they've been waiting decades to make happen. And then you also have low approval ratings. So one of the things that we know just based on recent Gallup poll or data is that his approval rating now is lower than President Obama's ever was during his 8 years in office. That's certainly not a very good look for President Trump.
Yeah. Molly, it is a rough number. Let's take a look at how you viewed the week in terms of your grade. You gave him a D for week number 10. Why?
Yeah, this week was wasted by a lack of focus and just distraction. He repeatedly went after the Freedom Caucus, trying to blame them for the failure of the health care legislation, even though it was massively unpopular among both moderate and conservative Republicans. And even more than that, the Freedom Caucus actually represents the sort of vibrant base of the party. These are people who understood the Trump movement before Trump even ran, and they're people who have run far ahead of Donald Trump in their districts. They got a lot bigger percentage of the vote in their districts than Donald Trump did. So it's precisely the the wrong type of group to go after. And more than that, if he thinks that he's going to work with moderate or liberal Democrats to advance his agenda rather than conservative Republicans, that's not just unprincipled, it's really unwise.
Yeah.
It wasn't a complete...
Chris, you're shaking your head. What are the prospects that he is going to peel off any of these Democrats who are so giddy at the idea that their resist movement appears to be working?
Well, let's give Trump the benefit of the doubt, and let's say that he is just trolling his own party and that he and Paul Ryan are doing a good cop, bad cop on conservatives so that Ryan can say, oh, my gosh, guys, you have to vote for Trump care and you have to do it now because otherwise he's going to work with Democrats. If you do not have any Democratic allies, this is not a credible threat. Donald Trump does not have any Democratic allies. He's got Joe Manchin, insofar as Joe Manchin can say that he is a Democrat still, but that's it. He is not a credible threat to beat up the members of his own party if he doesn't have Democratic allies. And right now, Democrats are just waiting to see how all the Russia stuff plays out and how everything else plays out, and they would be very happy to let him slip on banana peels for the next 3 years.
Just about 30 seconds left, but Jessica, there are Democrats who it might work well for to be on board with some of what he wants, given the fact that he did very well in their home states, like Joe Manchin, for example.
Sure. Some of these Democrats who would be on board with him in certain areas do so because they may not have the political capital to spend on other fights that other Democrats can weigh in on. And if they're going to weigh in on any fight, I don't think it's going to be any of the stuff that currently exists because, again, a lot of people are going to be worried about re-election right now. So much is up in the air, and Democrats are going to have to be incredibly careful with how they move forward with any continued criticism of the president before we have any more resolution on what's going on with, for instance, Nunez and Russia.
All right. Thank you very much, you guys. Good to see you. Hopefully, the Trump administration hopes your grades will be better next week, but we're open to whatever you bring us next week. So good to see you all. Thank you very much.
Happy Friday.
You too. Happy Friday.
Thank you.